1948 saw a new Morehead emerge. With the Southern Association granting reaccreditation and the school gaining its fourth name, now the Morehead State College, the future looked bright for all parties involved. Dr. Baird's failing health was beginning to take a toll on his day-to-day operations of running the campus. And in September of 1950, Baird became ill with a heart condition. The board granted Dr. Baird an 8-month leave of absence to convalesce from his heart issues. Dean Warren Lappin was appointed interim president for the second time. Sadly, on February 19, 1951, the sainted Dr. Baird passed away at a Cincinnati hospital. Dr. Baird was 60 years old. If it were not for the tireless efforts of Dr. Baird with regaining the school's accreditation, the university would not be what it is today. Dr. Baird is the only Morehead State president to have died in office. The Board of Regents began in April of 1951 discussing the selection of Dr. Baird's successor. After a long deliberation to find the right candidate, the board picked Charles R. Spain as Morehead State College's 6th president. Spain was the youngest president ever at 38, and his wife and 2 kids accompanied him to live in the on-campus president's home. In the summer of 1953, President Spain listened to the many voices and named the college auditorium after the school's founder, the first president, Frank Button. President Spain decided he would leave in 1954, informing the Board of Regents of his decision to leave at the end of the 1954 academic year. Spain was the shortest span president in the school's history. In 1952, the college held a contest to write the school's new alma mater and theme. The old normal school alma mater was long past its prime, and it was time to have a new theme song composed. Elwood Cozy won the songwriting contest, and Betty Jo Witt composed the music to accompany his lyrics. The winning entry was, "Far above the rolling campus, resting in the dale, stands our dear old alma mater, her name will always hail. Shout in chorus, lift our voices, blue and gold, praise thee, winning through to fame and glory, dear old MSC." Dr. Adrian Dorn, former Speaker of the Kentucky House of Representatives, was considered for Morehead State's presidency before the board's selection of Spain. This time around, the board was pleased to offer the position to Dorn. Adrian Dorn was a man with an interesting background. Dorn was born September 1st, 1901, on the Kentucky-Tennessee state line in Boydsville, Kentucky. Dr. Dorn had been a student at Freed-Hardeman College in Henderson, Tennessee, earned a BS and MA degree from Murray State University, and received his Doctor of Education degree from the University of Kentucky in 1950. Dorn was elected to the Kentucky State General Assembly in 1943 and was selected Speaker of the House in 1950.
And that was a pretty powerful position, and they wanted to get him out of that because they didn't like what he was doing. So the governor at that time appointed university presidents. So the governor appointed him president of Morehead if he would resign from that position.
Dr. Dorn came to campus starting officially in the fall of 1954. Dorn was a man with a long religious preaching background, education, and political connections. The campus had not had a new building built since 1937 and was unknown outside of Kentucky. This was all about to change as Dr. Dorn took the helm. Dorn, known for his trademark bow ties, immediately took the bull by the horns at Morehead's campus. Dorn and his wife Manon were both fixtures on campus, in town, and in the Commonwealth. Dorn, as put by his contemporaries, conducted miracles on Morehead's campus.
He got the money. He could get the money. And that's what makes, and got all the buildings built during that time that he was here, all the construction that went on. Buildings were built often
more than one being built at one time, and our enrollment was growing at an exceptional rate.
On May 17, 1954, the Supreme Court decision, Brown versus the Board of Education, started the process of opening schools in the country to black students.
The way Dr. Dorn had arranged the program itself, he had made a decision back in 1956. He met with the board, and he told them at that particular point that he was going to integrate Morehead State.
That summer, the first two students of color at Morehead State, Anna Louise Randolph and Ida Mae Ross, attended summer courses. The two females had signed up for courses in commerce and library science. Dr. Dorn, at the opening convocation in 1957, states to all the university body, if you have any objections to the presence of African American students who may be sitting beside you, you can find another institution of higher learning more to your liking further south. Morehead State was the first state-supported institution in Kentucky to integrate dorms, athletic teams, and the first Ohio Valley Conference school to allow black students to participate in athletics. Marshall Banks was the first black student to participate on a varsity athletic team in the Ohio Valley Conference.
You know, I had one indication that things weren't going to go as well as I thought, and the issue was this. We were taking the official team photograph for the 59-60 season. And so it clearly shows that I'm in the photograph, on one photograph, and I'm absent on the other one.
Marshall Banks, originally on the MSU basketball team, switched to running cross country after a run-in with then coach Bob Laughlin.
I went home, made the decision, came back, and told Coach Laughlin that this was, I was no longer going to stay for the team.
In 1959, the Ashland freshmen entered Morehead State and competed in the broad jump, the 880, the mile, and the 440-yard relay, setting the Kentucky record for the 100-yard dash. Banks graduated in 1962 and was hired in 1965 as the campus's first black faculty member.
Trust me as an athlete was something, but to trust me to be able to go into the classroom, to be able to shape minds of the, of all the kids there. That was another bold step that he was able to take.
There was another athlete after that named Howard Murphy. I think Howard was the first football player to play in, he actually played in the OVC. He was our star running back. He's from Ohio. And Dr. Dorn was very progressive.
Morehead continued to lead many firsts in desegregation. This process was not easy, and many students had issues with town folks, merchants, and other students. Dr. Dorn was the first to defend the students and calm relations in the changing landscapes of the civil rights era. Dr. Dorn, in 1958, named the campus science hall to Lappin Hall in honor of then-current academic dean Warren Lappin. Lappin Hall was the first hall to be named for a living person. Dorn continued his progressive stance on funding and growing the campus. Morehead State in 1950 had an enrollment of 783 students, increased to 2,000 students by the late 1950s.
You cannot talk about the Dorns, either one of them, without talking about the other, because they were two, but they were united. They were one.
Manon Dorn founded the Personal Development Institute, where she taught students to improve their social skills and become successful in their personal lives. Manon also established the Cosmopolitan Club and became a statewide speaker at high schools throughout Kentucky. Mrs. Dorn played the organ at Kentucky boys basketball tournaments and also at the Morehead State home basketball games. Dr. Dorn was well known by the student body for his trademark bow ties. Mrs. Dorn was well known for her lavish collection of hats and dresses. Manon was once named one of the best hatted women in America. With the newly named Dorn Student House completed, and Weatherby Gymnasium, the school continued its building projects by completing more married student housing. Moving into the 1960s, the Dorn administration started working on the new campus master plan. The master plan estimated with the appropriate changes that by 1970, the campus could have an enrollment of over 7,000 students. The new plan was to build structures up into the sky to take advantage of land space and keep the campus compact. The first building completed in 1962 was a new administration building, diagonally across from the old. Next, the campus saw a 6-story semicircle building to house 300 students in a new dorm named in honor of Dr. Dorn's wife, Manon, entitled Manon Hall. The board approved plans for 7 buildings on the existing campus at a total cost of $8.2 million. The first, in addition to the Breckenridge Training School, a new 16-story semicircle dorm, and additions to Lappin Hall. In 1965, Morehead became the first regional college in Kentucky to own and operate a radio station. WMKY, Morehead State Public Radio, in 1972, became one of the 143 charter members of National Public Radio. In what was once thought unimaginable, Morehead State Teachers College in 1966 gained a brand new name. 1966, Morehead became officially a university and gained the name of Morehead State University. Morehead State wore 4 different names during its first 44 years as a state institution. Dean Warren Lappin, who had been part of the faculty since 1919, was appointed vice president for academic affairs. The university was divided into 5 schools with the head of each a dean. Morehead continued its extensive building program into 1966. Now with the university name, it is more important than ever to update the campus and showcase what the school had to offer. Dr. Dorn's magic continued into 1968. Funding was received and used to build a brand new art building. The building, named Claypool Young, named for 2 former art teachers at the Morehead State Teachers College. 1969 saw the opening of Cartmel Hall, a 17-story residence hall which would house 512 people. That same year, Nunn Hall, a residence hall for women, also opened. The Dorn Student House was enlarged and renamed the Adrian Dorn University Center. Button Auditorium was renovated to make room for the Army ROTC, and land was purchased to build the MSU Farm. Construction continued into the 1970s with the building of Reed Hall, a classroom and office building, and then major renovations to the old administration building to the present look of modern-day Raider Hall. With $50 million worth of renovations since 1954, Morehead State University looked to the future.
Dr. Dorn, when he came in, he was a Jedi master of working the political scene. He had been a Speaker of the House. He had, in Kentucky, he knew the politicians, he knew the system, he knew how to work it. Plus, at that time in the mid-50s was when the big burst of money from the federal government for education came in.
So how did a small school like Morehead swing the $50 million? Dr. Dorn and his connections to Frankfurt and national politicians is a very important clue. Dr. Dorn has been referred to by many titles, from miracle worker at his ability to get funding for buildings and programs to a spellbinding orator for years in the ministry. One thing was for sure, Dr. Dorn was the right man at the right time for Morehead State. With all of Dr. Dorn's accomplishments, he was known for his leadership style. Dorn famously would tell students at the opening of the semester that this was his university, and if you don't like it, go start your own university elsewhere. And of course, his most famous saying,
There's a bus going east.
There's a bus going east
And a bus going west.
and a bus going west.
There's a bus going east and a bus going west. If you don't like what's happening, get on one of those buses.
Dorn did everything Dorn's way, and you couldn't disagree with him. If you did, you weren't here very long.
Whatever he said, that's what it was. And you didn't want to deal with that, you know. Yeah, even the faculty could catch the bus and go back.
Dorn's controlling and decisive nature led him to be a double-edged sword. People either loved Dr. Dorn or hated Dr. Dorn. Dorn didn't believe in shared governance and felt the president and his governing body reigned supreme. Love him or hate him, we are all still talking about Dr. Dorn to this day. One particular incident involving his leadership style was the on-campus reaction to the Kent State shootings in 1970. Hundreds of campus students and faculty marched to the ROTC building at Button Auditorium. The students were angry, confused, and ready to burn the building down. In the summer of 1970, in light of the Kent State shootings, saw college campuses all over the country burned, broken, and looted. The students, many with torches in hand, rushed the steps of Button Auditorium. Art Kelly, professor of military science, addressed the students. The students responded with wanting to hear from Dr. Dorn. Dr. Dorn, working his way through the student herd, helmed the steps of Button Auditorium and began to address the crowd. Dorn explained to the crowd that he nor anyone else had any control of the terrible events at Kent State or the war in Vietnam. Dr. Dorn started answering questions from the students and then closed the session with leading a prayer vigil for the people who lost their lives at Kent State. The campus awoke the next morning with broken windows and large threats, but nothing more. Observers of the riot that night thought Dorn worked a miracle in keeping the students at bay.
As the years came and went, his style of management became out of date. And he began to lose a little prestige that he had held here earlier.
Dr. Dorn began to flirt with resigning as president. Dorn received a new 4-year contract from the Board of Regents in 1974. Dorn announced his retirement from Morehead State on April 6, 1976, 22 years to the day after his selection as Morehead president. Dorn's public parties, visiting grandness, performing troopers, and even his own smiling ride on the back of an MSU show horse are something out of King Arthur. Dr. Dorn announced that he would take a sabbatical during the fall of 1976 and officially retire on January 1st, 1977.
This is a most difficult task for me because there's something about a valedictory that indicates finality. Finality to some degree in time and circumstances. I have heard, as many of you who deliver class addresses have heard many salutatorians and valedictorians speak at high school commencements. I've always thought it was one of the necessary evils of a high school graduation, like having a university president as the commencement speaker. But there's a difference in the sound of the tunes of each of them. There's a great difference between my salutatorian address on October 22, 1954, and my valedictory on November the 30th, 1976.
As Dorn left Morehead, he left an institution that was transformed during his 22 years at the helm. The school grew from a small state school to a burgeoning university in the mountains. Who would succeed Dr. Dorn? After 23 years, who would fill his shoes? Dr. Morris Norfleet narrowly won a vote of the Executive Council to be the interim president. Dr. Norfleet, Morehead State's 8th president, kept most of Dorn's key people in their positions.
I didn't take the interim presidency in order to become president. It wasn't in my goal system right at all. But I liked the interim presidency, but it was the worst period of time that I've had in my career.
It was really a tough period. Well, Dr. Dorn was very successful as a president. As I said, and you use the word imperial president, it was a time that I knew we had to change the university and what we did. And my goal was to get the faculty involved, and Dr. Dorn did a lot of good. Well, if he hadn't been there, there would not have been much of a university. He really worked hard. That was the only goal that he had, is to work as president.
Norfleet unfortunately never enjoyed the wholehearted support in key positions inside the administration. Norfleet was able to secure funding in a time of no funding to build the Academic Athletics Center. Dr. Norfleet finished Dr. Dorn's final term, and in 1980, Norfleet was granted a 4-year extension in contract by the Board of Regents. 1980 saw the state questioning the Norfleet administration when key MSU employees were accused of financial irregularities. After 7 years at the helm, Norfleet announced that he would be stepping down in 1984. Dr. Norfleet left campus with infighting in the administration and campus. The next president would have quite the chore bridging this gap. The board appointed on April 28, 1984, Herb F. Reinhardt as Morehead State's 9th president. Reinhardt had served as president of Slippery Rock University in Pennsylvania for 5 years prior. Reinhardt was given a 2-year contract running through 1986. With the dissension of the Norfleet administration still present, many felt Reinhardt would have his work cut out for him trying to heal the campus. Reinhardt made sweeping changes in removal of key positions. Reinhardt was a marked man when the board failed to give him a contract extension. Although the administration of the campus disliked Reinhardt, the students loved him. Reinhardt almost immediately, in taking the position of president, would meet with the students and show up for students' events. Just 10 days before spring commencement in 1985, over 500 students joined a march on campus on behalf of Reinhardt.
Angry at the Board of Regents for refusing to vote to extend President Reinhardt's contract past next June. Last week, the board met for 2 hours in closed session, but decided not to vote. President Reinhardt said if the board didn't vote, he'd be looking for another job.
Despite the students leaning, Reinhardt was gone at the end of the academic year in 1986. The campus, now faced with a third president in 10 years after Dr. Dorn had served 23, turned again to the board to search for the new president. The campus turned to Dean of Higher Education in the state of Kentucky, A.D. Albright, to come out of retirement to help heal the school. Dr. Albright led a transitional year that saw the return of former Dean C. Nelson Grody as the campus's 11th president in 1987. Dr. C. Nelson Grody, former Dean of Applied Sciences, had applied for the president's position before the hiring of Reinhardt. Dr. Grody returned to what he and his family felt was home in Morehead.
I determined that if I was going to come back to Morehead, and it was my dream from the time I came here, and watching Dr. Dorn and watching the university, I dreamed of becoming president of Morehead State. And I tried to prepare myself for that. In the 16 years we were gone in learning how to be a president, we subscribed to the Morehead paper for 16 years, Morehead News, and read it better than people back here. People back here would read certain things, we read it all. We were better informed than a lot of people here, and we would telephone call from Spokane because of the distance. But when we were in Michigan for 10 years, we came here every year for a visit. After the president had resigned, I became a candidate and I was invited for an interview. I kept saying, I want to come home. Within a couple of days, I got a telephone call, and they said, "We want you to be our next president." I'd wanted that for 16 years. I considered it the epitome of my career. I came here because I thought I could put this place back together again. I came here to help my university that I loved. That showed. I love this university. If you can love a university, I don't know, I think you can. I loved it. But I loved it as I remembered it, partly. And it was fun to be here. That's all I can say. I just had a joyous time here.
Dr. Grody came to Morehead State, and with his slogan, "Together We Can," he did. In 1990, Dr. Grody informed the board that he would retire on June 30th, 1992. With Dr. Grody giving the board a 2-year notice on his retirement, the board had time to search out the perfect candidate to replace him. After a lengthy search, Dr. Ronald G. Eaglin was selected as Morehead State's 12th president. Dr. Eaglin, when interviewing for the position, had stated that he felt Morehead would stay clear to its mission of building a strong teacher education system and serving the mountains. Dr. Eaglin inherited a campus that was short on state funding and knew things would have to change to help the school grow into the 1990s and the ever-expanding technology era of the 2000s.
But what drew me to Morehead was its mission, being a first-generation college student myself. Its historical mission and what it seemed to mean to this part of the country was very appealing to me, and I thought it would be a good fit. And it did. It turned out to be a very good fit. So it was a great ride. We had to change a lot of things. We did a lot of entertaining, a lot of trips out into the mountains. When we moved the football to non-scholarship was very controversial at the time, and they thought we'd lose our status in the OVC, but we didn't. Well, obviously, I'm very proud of the space science program. We set out to accomplish things when we became, you asked me what I was proud of when we became one of the top 25 institutions. I was told point blank that could never happen at Morehead, point blank. And I think with the hard work and setting of goals by the faculty and by the staff and by the most part staying together. I mean, we it happens, you stray apart on issues. But if you can keep that mission going, and I think your current president has done that well. I spent almost full 13 years here as the president through a lot of changes.
Dr. Eaglin, after 13 years, decided to step down from the presidency in December of 2004. The board begins to search for Dr. Eaglin's successor, and in 2004 selected Dr. Wayne D. Andrews as Morehead State's 13th president. Dr. Andrews entered into his presidency in 2004 with much optimism. Dr. Andrews embarked on a new plan to reinforce the campus infrastructure. MSU built the new Space Science Center, a state-of-the-art research facility and Star Theater. Button Auditorium was given a much-needed renovation, and a new campus recreation and wellness center was built. The Center for Health, Education, and Research was also completed, and a new home was given to the Kentucky Center for Traditional Music.
The first thing I did was, kind of gather the facts. I did my own SWOT analysis. What are we strong at? Where are our weaknesses? So I walked the entire campus. I went in every building on this campus. I held meetings with faculty at the program level in every program. And it took me about 6 months to do all this. First of all, in terms of the physical environment, the campus needed a lot of work. There was a huge amount of deferred maintenance. We just had not paid careful attention to the place. And this is a beautiful campus, but we had not kept it up as we needed to, so it was very obvious to me. So we began a very aggressive campaign to make this place as good looking as it could be, and I think we've achieved that. We spent For example, we took down a lot of buildings that served no useful purpose. They weren't being used, they were eyesores, and they just didn't make our place look like a quality place. I think that what I've done is created a sense of vision for what we could be. Morehead has always aspired to do great things for its people. And what I've tried to do is capture people's imagination with the possibilities. So as part of our strategic plan, we talked about a vision to become the best regional public university in the South. And you know, that's met with a lot of cynicism through the years. People would say, you know, it's not possible, we don't have enough money, we're Morehead, you know, and all that sort of talk. My answer to that is, I can give you examples today where Morehead State University is the best among those regional comprehensive universities in the southern states of the United States. Space science would be an example. Biomedical science is the program where we prepare students to go to professional schools, whether it's medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, veterinary science, the like, is a top program. Our acceptance rates are terrific. So here we sit today, you know, 120 years later, I suppose, talking about the vision that Frank Button and his mother Phoebe had for this place, that a university, that an educational institution could become a college and a university and contribute so powerfully to the region and the state. Their notion was this place could be a light unto the mountains of eastern Kentucky. It has been, it is, and it will continue to be, because that's the heart of what we do.
As modern-day students walk the streets of Morehead State University, do they ever think of how many people have walked these same streets before them? What would Phoebe and Frank Button think of modern-day Morehead State University? I like to think of the amazement and marvel that would exist in the eyes of the Buttons at the scene of the campus today. From what was started in a poorly ventilated two-room home to now a modern institution which has been named one of the top public universities in the South for over 10 years running. When you walk down University Boulevard, it's hard to not smile when you think of how Frank and Phoebe would be so proud to see the results of their hard work that all started back in 1887. The Buttons came to Morehead to help spread the light to the mountains and help a region in need. In what started in a small rented cabin, Morehead State University has grown from the mountains to literally the stars. With very humble beginnings in the shadow of the rugged frontier, Morehead began its long journey to the present-day university. The story of Morehead State University is one of triumph, luck, and perseverance. While looking at present-day Morehead State University, I like to think of the faces of the people who dedicated lives, years, and careers to making this institution what it is today. In a region that is known for hardship and strife, this institution's light has shined so bright to touch everyone in it. Although on many occasions the light to the mountain was dim, it continued to shine. The light continued to shine through wars, floods, and politics. The light, despite all the challenges, continued to shine, and every generation, the light continued to shine a little brighter. So how did a small school in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, with a nationally known feud, become one of the top public universities in the South? The answer is simple. The light to the mountains shines so bright that in the spirit of the students, faculty, and staff, the school grew in the hearts and minds of the Commonwealth. The school created teachers, doctors, lawyers, politicians, and athletes, all of which still remember dear old MSU. The story of Morehead State is a story that is stranger than fiction, but Morehead State will always be remembered in our hearts and souls. Let us remember always the words of Morehead State's alma mater. Far above the rolling campus, resting in the dale, lies our dear old alma mater, we will always hail. Shout in chorus, raise your voices, blue and gold, praise you. Shining through to fame and glory, dear old MSU.